Bex Johnson, rating 91. The Kitchen of the Rollins Manor. Bex was still not over that name, was a crush of bodies. But Melody didn't appear to mind as she dragged Bex through the crowd. A few people recognized Bex from school. Most seemed surprised to see her there, but not displeased. A handful even shot her positive ratings. The music wasn't as loud in the kitchen, but it was less noisy. But was no less noisy. A tray of tiny cups filled with multicolored colored liquid sat on the counter. Melody picked up two, one for herself and one for Bex. Whatever it was, Bex didn't want it, Bex and Melody knew Bex didn't drink. She had too much on her plate. Even so, Melody held out the small plastic cup. Apparently, tiny disposable glasses were a thing. It was filled with bright green substance that jiggled like gelatin. No thanks, Beck said, offering it back to Melody. Melody refused. She pushed it back toward Bex with that same intense insistence that Bex both loved and hated about her. Oh, come on, it'll be fun. Bex looked around for a place to dispose of the drink, but there wasn't anywhere obvious to put trash. It simply accumulated on every available surface. Bex placed it on the counter. Let it be someone else's problem. Melody, why are you here? You don't even like summer. Melody crooked her shoulders up a little in a little shrug. Summer's actually kind of cool, actually. She said if I helped her with this thing, then maybe I could go to her family's ski chalet over winter break. It's super exclusive. Can you imagine the rating spike I get? The ratings spikes. The ratings spike I get. Bex was only aware that her expression had been pulled into a frown when the Melody reached out and smoothed the wrinkle that formed between Bex's eyebrows whenever she did. What's what thing, Melody? Oh, nothing major. Melody shrugged, but she refused to meet Bex's eyes. Her gaze bounced around the kitchen from the crumb-covered tray that held the lone cupcake to the obvious couple making out against the fridge. Oblivious couple making out against the fridge. That was just some girl who needed to put it all in her place is all. Tamsin. Blood rushed into Bex's face. She wasn't mad. Mad was too soft a word. She was incensed. How could she reconcile Melody, the girl who slept over at her house with hated board games because they were too competitive, with the strange partygoer engaged in a crowdsourced bullying campaign? Melody, why would you do that? It's not a big deal, Melody said with another shrug. Besides, she was rude to me. She kind of had it coming. Melody, Bex started. She didn't know how to finish. Bex, Melody knew it was wrong. That was why she wouldn't look Bex straight in the eye. But Bex's disapproval had only ever gone so far with her friend. Melody always did exactly what she wanted, whatever the consequences. This was the system's. This was the system bred. It swallowed up good people and made them do things that they otherwise wouldn't for the quick high of a ratings bump and the validation of people who shouldn't have mattered. You know, Bex, one of these days you're going to have to un- unclench. Bex snagged a drink off the tray before leaving Bex alone in that cramped kitchen. See you Monday. Maybe you'll be more fun by then. It took longer to find a door to the back garden than it felt reasonable. The house, no, the manor, was just that big. It was probably the biggest residence in town. The the Rollins, the Rollins were the wealthiest family in Jackson Hills, and they wanted everyone to know it. Once outside, Bex sucked in a deep lungful of air. It was getting chilly, but she vastly preferred the brisk evening to the claustrophobic warmth of the party. The garden wasn't completely devoid of people, but they were sparsely scattered around. A couple being on a nearby bench was making out with as much vigor as in the kitchen. Bex couldn't imagine her shoving her tongue down someone else's throat like that, much like much less doing it in public. She wanted to go outside to the other side of the garden, where a gabozo seat, a gaza, a gazo, gazebo, a gazebo, gazebo, a gazebo sat, bathed, bathed in the soft, bathed, bathed in the soft glow of fairy lights wrapped around its pillars. Out here, she was almost alone enough to breathe. Her ears rang in the relative silence. She hadn't realized how loud it was until the noise fell away, relegating to relegate, relegated to a distant drumming of the soft bass drifting from open windows. I thought I'd found you here. Beck started. Chase stood behind her, at the base of the short steps leading to the gazebo. Gazebo, gazebo. His hands were shoved in his pockets, and he gave her an apologetic smile. Sorry, didn't mean to scare you. It's okay, Beck said, though her heart was still pounding hard enough that she could feel it in her throat. I just needed some air. Parties aren't really my thing. It's cool. Chase climbed the steps in a single bound. His legs were long enough for it and came to stand beside her. It's not really my scene either. I find it I find that kind of hard to believe, Beck said. Oh yeah? Why that? Beck shrugged and waved a hand at the manor packed full of people who didn't just accept Chase's presence among them. They welcomed it. They courted it. They tolerated Bex, but they wanted him. Aren't they your people? Chase turned and leaned against the railing, half sitting on it. Not really. They like having me around because I'm a really good pitcher. That's sort of what our interests align. But if it weren't for baseball, I wouldn't be here. He placed one hand on the nearest column, fingers tracing the intricate intricate carving of leaves winding around it. This is about as far from where I come as you can get. This is about as far from where I come from as you get. He went silent then. Bex felt like there was a layer to his words beneath the ones he actually spoke out loud. The possibility of ex- ex- excavating excavating that hidden layer of meaning was so tantalizing, so close, she could almost taste it in her tongue. The soft lighting was kind to him. It emphasized the sharpness of his cheekbones, the angle of his jaw. Her heart was still pounding, but for an entirely different reason. She didn't quite understand, so she changed the subject. Where's Hannah? Bex said. Bex asked. Bex asked. Bex asked. Bex asked. She's hanging out back, so she's hanging back so it didn't look like we're leaving together. Chase replied. I think she's actually helping Summer look for this. He slipped the necklace out of his pocket and dangled in front of Bex's face. She slipped it right after she left Summer's room. Summer didn't notice a thing. Hannah, Hannah's like a scary good actress. Maybe it's all about that emoting that maybe it's all that emoting skaters do. Bex wrapped her hands around Chase and pressed the necklace into his fists. Oh my, Chase, put that away before someone sees. He laughed, but he tucked the necklace away. Then his eyes widened. Oh, I can't believe I forgot to show you this before. From his pocket, Chase pulled out a crumpled test booklet, mishapen, misshapen from having been shoved in his jacket. Behold, my latest chem test. Beck snatched the booklet from him and opened it so quickly she nearly tore the front page off the front page. But when she saw the numbers scrawled in red ink, she nearly dropped the booklet. 76? Chase, you passed! Chase glanced down, suddenly bashful. Barely, but yeah. Don't let, don't sell yourself short. This is amazing. Bex cradled the booklet in her hands. In that moment, it was more precious to her than any 100 she'd ever received. She only reluctantly offered it back to him, and Chase returned the pages to the pocket with the stolen necklace. I'm really proud of you, Chase. He looked at her, canting his head to the side. You know, Chase, said Chase, that cardigan does look really nice on you. Bex shrugged. It was a little snug through it was a little snug through the shoulders, which wasn't surprising considering how petite Hannah was. It was just a sweater. Take that, take the compliment, Bex. Okay, fine, thank you. There was a wry curl to his lips when he smiled. You know, I'm not actually talking about the sweater, right? Only then did Bex realize that she was still touching one of his hands. He'd only pulled one away to put the necklace back in his pocket. The other remained under hers. Oh, slowly, painfully slow, the Chase turned his hand in her grasp, unfurling his fingers like a flower opening its petals. He gave her an ample time to pull away. When she didn't, he curled his fingers around hers, linking their hands. Would it be okay? Chase said as slowly as he'd taken her hand. If I kissed you right now, Bex answered without a thought, without hesitation, without a doubt. Yes, and eat it. A twig snapped, and Bex jumped away from Chase, dropping his hand. The loss felt monumental. Oh, sorry. Hannah was standing at the base of the Gabozo's Giz, Gizbo, Gizbo steps, 1 foot raised a few inches above a thin broken branch. I can leave. I was just we're done, so we can go. She started walking backwards. Or I can just go and you two can. Yeah, I'm just gonna go. No, wait, Chase said, his words warm and soft with mirth. It's fine. I'm glad no one caught you, though your timing could use some work. Hannah shuffled her feet in place, looking as though she was unsure if she should approach or retreat. Honestly, I don't mind. I can go back in if. No, Beck said, Maybe a little too quickly. Her mother was right. Boys were a distraction, but a really, really nice one. We should go get the necklace to Javi. ASAP. To be continued? Chase asked, voice light with hope. Awkward. Hannah said as she started walking toward the front lawn and away from the scene of their crime. Chase held out his hand for Bex. After a slender moment of hesitation, she took it. Yeah, Bex said. To be continued. Javi Lucero, rating 90. I feel like a third wheel, Tamsin said from her perch on the corner of Javi's bed. She'd flipped through the esports magazine that featured his grooming likeness on the front cover. She'd arrived shortly after Noah. As nice as it would be have been for Javi to have Noah all to himself, Tamsin was a necessary part of the plan. There there would be other nights for a metaphorical romance vehicle with only two wheels. Javi glanced over his shoulder at her. She didn't appear to be overly concerned about third wheelness. Her posture was relaxed, or as relaxed as it could be, considering they were going to commit several misdemeanors and at least one downright felony. Noah put a few inches between himself and Javi. He was standing by Javi's chair, looking over his shoulder as Javi explained how to access the ratings database. Each city had its own localized server, and the one in Jackson Hills was shockingly easy to get into if you knew what to do. Javi did. You know, he said, I used to joke that when the esports money ran dry, I could have a lucrative career in cybercrime. The esports money was a good one at the moment. The headsets were on their third production run. His rating had just cracked 90, but the cybercrimes were shaping up to be more fun. The the two weren't aren't mutually exclusive, Noah said. Look at you, multitasking like a champ. Javi smiled at Noah, who smiled down at him. Yep, Tamsin said, definitely a third wheel. I can go outside and hang out while with your siblings if you guys want a moment to coodle. I'm pretty sure there's enough of them for me to start my own softball league. Haha. But I respect your use of the word coodle in this sentence. Javier inched his chair closer to Noah, so his shoulder was brushing against Noah's stomach. He liked the contact. It helped him focus. A few more firewalls to bypass, and then we're in. Seriously, Hampson said, asked. She unfolded her legs and came to stand at Javi's other side that quickly. Javi offered her an insol- insolic insulcant shrug. Their security is good, but I'm better. Awesome, Noah said. Now all we need is Summer's necklace, and as if on cue, the doorbell rang. Javi sprang from his desk chair to intercept whoever it was before his sibling could pepper the poor souls with inappropriate questions. He managed to open it to make it downstairs before anyone else could get the door. He flung it open to find Bex, Chase, and Hannah standing on his stoop. Hey guys, he held open the door to let them in. Welcome to my sasa. His grandmother shoveled. Her grandmother shuffled her slippered feet into the room to see who was visiting so late at night. She was wrapped in a quilted housecoat. Miju? Um, what are the what are all these people doing here? It's so late. Study group. Abula, big test coming up. He began shepherding them up the stairs and toward his room. His grandmother was not appeased by his answer. Uh, yeah, it's Friday, but the test is on Monday. No such thing as too much studying. She hummed unhappily in the back of her throat, but seemed to appre- appreciate appreciate the answer. You can't study on an empty stomach. Let me get you something to eat. No, Mbula, it's okay. Javi started, but she was already on her way to the kitchen. Your grandmother is super cute. Is super cute, Hannah said. And honestly, said Chase, I could eat. Fine, fine. Javi said, go upstairs. I'll be bring snacks. Noah and Tamsin are in my room. Last door on the left. Javi followed his grandmother into their kitchen. The microwave was spinning, and she warmed up a plate of toastons. She made them in batches too huge for even a family of their size. You've never had so many friends come over at once, she complimented as they waited for the microwave to ding. Javi wasn't sure if they were all friends, or if they were all just a bunch of individuals thrown together by circumstance, or if there was a difference between the two. Yeah, Javi said, it's nice. They're actually pretty cool. I'm happy. The microwave beeped as the timer hit zero. She turned to take the plate out. You spend too much time on that computer. You should talk to people more, face to face. Yeah, I know. It was an old topic of conversation. His grandmother had never been able to comprehend that most of Javi's meaningful relationships were conducted over the internet. He was friendly with people from school, and but being friendly wasn't quite the same as being friends. But tonight he was just glad that the novelty of living, breathing humans in their house by Javi's innovation was enough for her to overlook the oddity that their 11 o'clock study group. Thanks, Mbula. Now go back to bed. You worked too hard. She patted his cheek. You're a good boy. He accepted the heaping plate of toaststones and gently coaxed her out of the doorway, but not before he caught sight, caught sight of the delegated little smile gracing her face. Nothing made her happier than extra mouths to feed. Nothing. The others fell on grandmother's tones like ravenous beasts once he presented them with the plate. All except Hannah. Tamsin offered her one, but she politely demurred. Tamsin frowned. Please? Javi watched as Hannah hesitated, then reluctantly took a toaststone. Toaststone? Toaststone. She broke it in half and took a dainty bite before sitting the other half back down. Tamsin looked inordinary, inordinary, inordinately, inordinary, inordinately, I don't know, pleased by this. There was something going on here, but it was probably not Javi's business. Javi's Chase. These are amazing, Chase said with his mouth full. Can your grandmother can your grandma adopt me? I'm sure she'd love to. She's never had an athletic appetite to feed. She's never had an athletic appetite to feed. She lived for the challenge. Nice. Chase helped himself for to another toston. Uh, toston. I'll have my people draw up the paperwork. Here is Summer's device. Bex offered Javi the necklace by its long golden chain. The actual device looked like a locket, more with the Rollins family crest emblazoned on the front. Javi was deeply amused that they had a crest at all. He pressed the clasps on the side to open it. Summer's rating blinked into existence on the display. 81. Not for long, Javi said with a dark chuckle. Your evil laugh is unsettling, Noah said as he perched on the arm of Javi's desk chair. But I kind of like it. Good, because honestly, it feels really natural. I think a life of crime suits me, Javi said, set the pendant on his desk and adjusted his lamp to shine directly on it. It would take very long it would take very long, fine, it would take very fine, delicate tools and steady hands to remove the back panel and access the tiny chip inside. No one, no one, no one's hands, no one's hands were steadier than Jeffy's. He ranked in the top percent on headshots from a distance in Polaris, after all. The others and paid only vague attention to what Jeffy was doing. He didn't mind. He had Noah there to help him if he needed it. And it was kind of nice to not be alone in his room playing video games in the dark. Not that he'd ever admit it to his Mbula. She'd be unbearably smug about it. Tamsin, Jeffy said, I need your smartwatch. She slipped it off and tossed it to Noah, who caught it before it could smack Jeffy on the side of the head. Sorry, she said. Why do you need it for? You'll see. With both chips out of their casings and inserted into the not entirely legal microchipped reader he'd purchased from a not entirely legal website that may or may not have existed on the dark web, he got to work. What are you doing? Noah asked. His breath ghosted over the shell of Jeffy's ear. It tickled a bit, but in a good way. Tweaking the algorithm, Jeffy said as his hands flew over his keyboard. He was in the zone. Nothing could stop him when he was in the zone. Okay, cool, Noah said after a beat. He added, what does that mean? Nothing could stop him save the opportunity to explain his brilliance to a willing audience. I'm altering the settings of Summer's rating interface. Whether someone tries to dock Tamsin, Whenever someone tries to dock Tamsin's rating, it'll bypass her and add a positive rating to Summer's numerical score. Wait, what's that? Tamsin fixed Jeffy with a glare that could have seared the skin off a weaker man. Why are we boosting her rating? Jeffy smiled, slow and languid. Tell him, Noah. Because, Noah said, nothing gets you the administrator's radar faster than a sudden, inexplicable surge in your number. Accounts that show a wild uptick in positive activity are normally flagged for review. And, Javi added, since I'm such a genius, and a modest too, Noah said, I left a few breadcrumbs for the authorities to find when they investigate Summer Rollins. What kind of breadcrumbs? Bex said. Enough to make it look like she hacked the system herself. Javi relished in the way Noah grinned at him, proud and devious. When they divided into when they dive in her base code, they'll see that alterations were made using her own device. All roads lead back to Summer. Where does that leave me? Tamsin asked. That leaves you in a poor unfortunate victim. Leaves you the poor unfortunate victim of Summer's cruelty. She deliberately tried to sabotage your rating by orchestrating a pile-on, and these markers will make it look like she tried to boost her rating on the same time. Sloppy. Your account will also get flagged for review. They'll reset your rating to what it was before this tragic, precipitous drop. I bet those kids who hopped on Summer's Mean Girl bandwagon will also find their ratings docked. Tamsin out a low, impressed whistle. Dude, you're good. Like crazy good. Javier prehended. I know. Pre preended. I know. Now eat up and pull up some books or something before my grandma realizes we're not actually studying. Tamsin Moore, reading 34. On Monday, Tamsin walked out of Headmaster Wood's office trying to fight the too wide grin that desperately wanted to blossom on her face. Summer Rawlins had been suspended. She was currently being investigated for ratings malif since mal malfinisis. Both her own and Tamsin's. Malapratope had a zero tolerance policy for such behavior, and Master Wood had insisted they would closely monitor Summer's activity as well as her circle of friends, minions. Tamsin's Tamsin's brain supplied to make sure there were no further incidents. He had relayed the information to Tamsin in the tone dripping with apology. He probably wanted to make sure he didn't raise a stink about the school's inaction when it was clear she was being targeted by Summer's smear campaign, and she wouldn't. The less attraction she drew to herself and her friends, the better. It was odd, thinking of them as friends, but nothing brought people together like a crime jointly committed. That was the sort of thing that expended, expended, expedited the friendship process. It felt different, walking out to the school's lawn reset reset period and knowing there were people waiting for her at one of the wooden picnic tables she usually avoided. They were the homes of the they were the homes of cl- clutches in clubs, not loners like her. But she wasn't alone now. It was different. Not bad different, but good different. The message Tamsin had sent the group chat before her meeting said to meet at the table by the old oak tree, and the one farthest from the main building. All the better to avoid being overheard by curious students and the noisy faculty. She knew the others would be dying for an update. When she reached the table, Hannah scooted over to let Tamsin sit beside her. There was a salad of mixed greens and tomatoes in a bento box in front of Hannah, and it looked like she was actually eating it. It wasn't much, but maybe it was a start. What did Wood say? Bex said. It it did not escape. It did not escape Tamsin's notice that a too large maroon malaprope jacket was draped over Tamsin Bex's shoulders. Tamsin winked at Chase, who crooked an eyebrow at her, daring her to comment. She didn't. Already she was growing as a person. Noah and Travis sat side by side, sharing an order of fries from the cafeteria. Javi had mentioned that the lunch lady always put some aside for him just in case he missed the fourth lunch period. Lucky. Tamsin got suspended, Tamsin said, and they reset my rating. She held up her wrist so the rest could see her new number, which was really her old number. Still stinks, but it's not expulsion level of stink. So what do we do now? Chase asked. Do we stop here or we could find other sad sacks like me to help? Tamsin ventured. You're not a sad sack, Hannah said. She popped a cherry tomato in her mouth and offered one to Tamsin. She accepted it. It exploded on her tongue in a burst of flavor. That's kind of you to say, Tamsin. Tamsin only half meant it. She was still trying to accept the fact that these people she hardly knew put themselves on the line for her. They didn't even know her. Maybe if they did, they wouldn't want to help her. She wasn't a nice person. She never tried to be one. But maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as bad as she thought she was. A friend of mine said there was similar graffiti at her university in London, Jeffy said, about the ratings not being real. This could be way bigger than Malabarthorpe. London? Tamsin asked. As in England? Like an ocean away? Beck's voice was tingled with some budding excitement she'd shown on that fateful night at Lucky's, when an unseen force had thrown them all together. That would be that would be the one. Yeah, Jeffy said. Could be something to follow up on. Guess we have our next mission, Noah said, after my sister. So, are we like a team now? Hannah asked. Is this what we do? Crime fighting cyber vigilantes? Chase asked. Wicked. Are we fighting crime or are we fighting something else entirely? Noah asked. Hannah frowned, puzzled. What do you mean? I mean, Noah said, what did we fight? What we did was fight something that was technically legal. So, fight something that was technically legal, so it's not a crime. But we all knew it was wrong. Bex nodded. Like how tweaking the Mongolian hospital record to keep your sister there isn't legal, but it's right. She turned to Jeffy. By the way, what did you need for that? Access to a hospital computer terminal would be great. Can you get me in? Javi asked. My mom did say there was an internship position available. That could work. Javi said, all we need is a reason to be there without arousing too much suspicion. Man, you guys are crafty, Tamsin said, though I'm not surprised. I'd expect nothing less from a girl who convinced her parents to let her boyfriend move in. Chase barked out a laugh as she darted to kiss Bex on the cheek. That's my girl, a criminal mastermind. Bex sank her teeth in her lower lip to quell her wicked grin. It wasn't that hard. All I had to do was mention that Chase needed a place to stay and that doing something charitable for a member of the Malabarthorpe community was in their best interest. And it helped when Headmaster Wood told them the school's board of trustees trustees would make sure their ratings got a nice bump. Did it bother your dad when you moved in? Hannah asked. Chase shrugged. It didn't escape Tremson's notice that he wouldn't close off that mention of close off the mention close off at the mention of his father. From what she'd been able to glean, the elder Dovin was a real piece of work. Nope. He didn't even put up a fight. Doubt he even notices I'm gone. Bex wrapped her hand around Chase and gave it a gentle squeeze. Forget him, Tamsin said. You have a new family now. A crime family. Xavier nudged Chase on the shoulder with his fist. It was too soft to be called a punch. That's right. And to think we already have our next job lined up, all thanks to Bex's cunning. Does it worry anyone else how quickly we've taken to this? Hannah asked. Nope, not really. Nah. Do you want out? Tamsin asked. Hannah shook her head. No, I just don't really see myself joining a high school cybercrime syndicate, that's all. Javi laughed as he dipped a fry into a small container of what looked to be barbecue sauce. Gross. That's not unreasonable expectation to have, he said, but it isn't kind of fun. On this they agreed. There was a sense of liberation in what they had done. No longer, no longer they were victims of circumstance or dehumanizing numbers in a system. They had control. They had agency. They saw something wrong and they did something about it. It felt a lot better than misanthropy had ever had. Not that Tamsin would ever admit that one aloud. She had a reputation to maintain. Hey, Hannah said, is that Summer? They all turned to see a girl storming out of the doors, the very same ones that had been spray painted what felt like a lifetime ago, and stomped down the stairs. With a huff, she threw herself down on a stone bench next near the front of the school and began furiously typing something on her phone. Texting her minions, most likely. Tamsin wondered how many of them would stick by her side now that she lost her crown. No one wanted to be associated with raiding malfeasance. Malfeasance. If Summer pers- wasn't wasn't already persona non grata with her old court, she would be soon. I'll be right back. Tamsin pushed up and walked and away from the table. There's something I gotta do first. Are you sure that's a good idea? Bex asked. Yeah, Chase asked. Maybe don't poke the bear. Tamsin snagged one of Noah and Javi's fries. I'm going to poke the bear. Tamsin, just leave it, Hannah said, but Tamsin was already walking toward the bench. She saw the moment Summer recognized her as she drew closer. The girl's posture changed from angry to defensive, like a wild animal bracing for attack. Her back straightened and her face hardened into a scowl. She scrubbed at her eyes with her sleeve. She'd been crying. What do you want? Summer asked. Come here to gloat? I don't know what you're talking about, Tamsin said, with a disbelieving snort. Summer reached into her pocket of her Malaprothrope blazer and pronounced a packet of bubble gum. She held Tamsin's gaze and drew a strip out of the package and popped it in her mouth. She chewed loudly, then blew an obnoxiously large bubble. It popped. Its pop was even more obnoxious. Gum was banned on Malapathrope's campus, mainly to discourage students from sticking it under desks or spitting it on walkways. Students caught with such sugary contraband were subjected to automatic 1 point deduction. Gum? Tamsin asked. On school grounds? Scandalous. Summer smacked her gum. The sound was obnoxiously loud. What are they gonna do? Kick me out? Pretty sure Wood's already working on that. Might as well rebel while you're at it, huh? Summer heaved a drawn out sigh. What do you want, Tamsin? I don't know how you did it, but you won. You don't have to rub it in. The defiance seemed to bleed out of Summer in a slow spurts, like a wound expelling the last blood pumped by a dying heart. She looked small in a way she'd never been had before. They won't talk to me, you know. Summer held up her phone and wriggled it at Tamsin. No one's responding to my texts. It's like I don't even exist. Summer Tamsin really didn't want to ask what she was about to ask. She didn't really didn't. Except she kind of did. Maybe it was more about curiosity, but the sight of the girl who nearly tormented her to expulsion, sitting on a stump and crying, wasn't as satisfying as she thought it would be. Are you okay? Tamsin asked. Summer Hampson hastily wiped her tears again. All it did was bunch her eyeliner. What do you care? Because I'm not a complete jerk, Hampson asked. Summer snorted. That was answer enough. Okay, fine. I'm kind of a jerk, but I'm trying this new thing where I'm not as much as one. Summer said, and because she was kind of a jerk, she added, "You should try it sometime." Summer let out a startled laugh. Yeah, maybe. Hampson sat down on the bench beside Summer. The other girls shot her a confused glare, but she didn't object. Not allowed, anyway. It's just, why? Why did you try to ruin my life? Why are you like this? Why are you so cruel? Why was I cruel in return? All those questions filtered into a single effective word. When Steve was with Sasha, he showed her the stuff I sent him, like all of it, every text, every email, every photo I'd ever sent, even the ones I'd only ever meant for him to see. Oh, Tamsin said, that's that's messed up. And that wasn't even the worst part. They put them online, the text. Those weren't a big deal, but the pictures. Summer scrubbed her tear-stained cheeks with her sleeve. My parents saw them, and I cannot explain to you how mortifying that was. My parents tried to get them taken down, but once something's on the internet, it's on there forever. A twinge of sympathy coiled in Tamsin's gut. No one deserved that, not even Summer. Yeah, they told me you did it. That that someone sent you the pics and you put them up. I could just imagine put it you in that music room laughing at me. It just drove me crazy. That sucks and all, said Tamsin, but you know what? That isn't my fault. I know, Summer said. I never really believed it was. No one, none of us would ever be caught dead texting you. It's just that you made such an easy target. Wow, Tamsin said with a startled laugh. It's kind of impressive how you can just come out and say that. Summer shrugged. What have I got to lose? I'm about to get kicked out of Malapathrope. Every generation of Rollins has graduated from the school for the past 100 years. I'll be the first one to leave in disgrace. Might as well clear my consciousness as well as my locker. Oh, I'll sure you'll be back, Tamsin said. There's nothing Rollins money can't buy. Summer snorted. You're not wrong there. Tamsin looked over the rolling hills of the Malapathorpe campus. The verdant trees were just began to change. In a few weeks, instead of sea green, the school would be surrounded by waves of autumn gold and crimson. It's kind of messed up when you think about it. Tamsin just shrugged. It's how the world works. Yeah, Tamsin said. For now. Summer looked at her gum in her mouth, took the gum out of her mouth, holding it in a dainty grip between two fingers, then flicked it toward the center of the walkway. Perfect for someone to step on later. Never would have pegged you for the optimistic type. She stood, wiping her hands artfully on her artfully ripped jeans. Well, I'm out. Try not to burn the place down while I'm gone. I make no promises, Tamsin said. She really, really didn't. Of course not. I never hated you, you know. Tamsin wasn't sure why she said it. only that it felt right to say. I don't know why, Tamsin said. I am pretty easy to hate. Maybe that's why we don't get along, said Tamsin. We got too much in common. For perhaps the first time since they both started at Malaprothrope as two opposite poles of the social spectrum, Tamsin and Summer Rollins and Tamsin Moore smiled at each other, and both almost meant it. Epilogue. On the appointed day at the appointed time, six teenagers approached the abandoned music building on Malapathrope's campus. Flashlights illuminated their path. The security system had been disabled. Another act of Tamsin's brilliance. But they tried to be quiet anyway. It wouldn't be too good to get caught this close to having answers, real substantial answers. Tamsin led the way. She didn't need a flashlight to to illuminate the ground before her. She knew the path by heart. The building had been her refuge from the place that never belonged to her, and to which she had never belonged, until the possibility that it had been to take away her becoming became alarmingly real. She hadn't thought she would ever miss it, but Malaprothrope, with all its flaws, with all its blemishes and sins, had forged her into the person that she felt herself becoming. She would always be a miss misanthropic sight sin 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 since hmm? Cynice Cynice misanthropos science. But she was beginning to think that maybe she could be that and more. Hannah held on to the sleeve of Tamsin's wool sweater, a nice deep eggplant color to complement the rest of her outfit. She she worried about tripping over something in the dark, like a rock or a fallen branch. She'd run out of excuses to skip practice with Dmitri. In 6 hours, she had to be on ice, ready to give a triple axel another try. She knew she would likely fail, again and again, but nothing was ever gained by giving up. Her coach had also made an appointment for her after school in lieu of practice. He hadn't said what the appointment was for, but she'd googled the name of the doctor, a sports psychologist with experience dealing with elite athletes. Hannah didn't protest. She hadn't thanked him either. She wasn't sure yet if she was grateful for the intervention, but she was aware that she needed it. Bex wrapped her hands tight around her middle. It was cold, despite the fact that autumn had only just begun to set in. The Hudson Valley was just like that. Warm one minute and then cold as the Arctic the next. Chase's jacket hung from her shoulders, sealing in some of her body heat. She hadn't asked for it. She simply shivered and then felt its solid weight dropped over her onto her shoulders. She glanced at him. He was close enough that she just make just make out her facial expression. A small a small smile and a hand self-consciously rubbing the back of his neck. She whispered a soft thanks and tried to make it so not so obvious when she breathed in the scent of him from the collar of the jacket. It was nice, and it would probably distract her another great deal in the days to come. But maybe, just maybe, distractions weren't all that bad. It certainly felt nicer than having her brain run circles around itself like a distressed Pomeranian. Chase was cold. He tried not to show it, but it was cold out. But the sight of Beck's being swallowed up by his jacket warmed something deep inside him quite that he couldn't quite name. Earning that leather jacket had meant so much to him. It meant symbolized it. It had symbolized all the things that he craved so desperately. A chance to be something, someone. A road out of Jackson Hills and away from the life that fit him so poorly. He never let anyone else touch it. He'd care for it. Spot spot cleaning it. He'd cared for it, spot cleaning it in the privacy of his own room, while his father relieved the glory relieved the glory of his own leather jacket days downstairs. But relived the glory of his own leather jacket days downstairs. It had been a lifetime, an opportunity, but now he thought that maybe X wore it better than he ever did. And now that he was living in her guest room, he'd get the chance to see her wearing it a lot more often. Noah's hand was around; it was warm in Jeffy's. Neither of them had spoken when Jeffy reached out in token. A part of him had worried that Noah wouldn't be receptive to that sort of casual contact Javi craved. Ev- an even bigger part of him thrilled when Noah gave his hand a quick squeeze in return, holding on as they walked toward the music building. Javi was a tactical person, always had been. He'd stepped on the void left by his parents, cared for his little brothers and sisters when they were sick, and his Ebola was overextended. He tucked them into bed, and felt their foreheads for fevers, had rubbed their backs when they cried, and held them when they had nightmares, and crawled into his bed. Their faces their faces sticky with tears. Love meant being there physically. He knew it, and was too early to drop and bomb like that on Noah. But the feeling still exploded in his chest in the most pleasurable way. One day, no, Travi thought, one day he'd tell. It was nice, Noah thought, to be touched like that. He hadn't realized how starved for touch he'd been until Javi had started doing it casually. A shoulder leaning against Noah's own, their thighs touching under a table at Lucky's, a hand holding his as they picked their way across the Lapathrop lawn toward what he hoped would be a conclusion to the odd series of events that had led them to this moment. Every time Jeffy's skin brushed his own, Noah had reminded that he was there. He was present. He was wonderfully alive. He'd thought that he'd experienced the world through the filter of a lens, had found but but had found comfort in a distance. But he was beginning to think that maybe immersion could be as fascinating as observation. When they reached the building, Tamsin paused, one hand on the door. You guys sure about this? Not really, Beck's mom admitted. Chase just shrugged. Was the worst that could happen? There could be an murder, axe murderer lying in wait, Hannah supplied. Yeah, but what are the odds of that happening? Jeffy asked. That sounded like exactly the sort of thing someone would say right before they got axe murdered in a horror movie. Noah asked. Noah said, "Okay, great. So we're all going to die." Tamsin rolled her eyes and pushed the door open. The creaking door of the hinges loud in the quiet night. Let's go. They went. In the dark inside, but a silver of light shined from the upstairs landing. They shared glances ranging from curiosity to concern. But still, they went, following the signs along to light up the following the siren song that led up the groaning of the staircase. Tamsin knew which steps to avoid to keep her tread light, but the others didn't. This was her domain, not theirs. The door at the end of the hall was open just enough to emit a triangle of amber light. It flickered down. It flickered as they approached. Candlelight then was perfect for dancing in the persistent breezes that made their way through the building's old bones. The door swung open under Tamsin's gentle push. Silent and slow, they crowded at the threshold, each of them just as silent. Chase broke first. What the? Headmaster, what? Bex pushed her way to the forefront of their little group. And the headmaster was alone. Wasn't dressed in the way he normally was at school. Gone were the immaculately tailored suits and pressed slacks and the shining wingtips. He looked younger, clad in dark jeans and a thick burgundy sweater. He smiled when he saw them. "Oh, good! You all decided to come. I was a bit worried one or two of you would get cold feet." Again, Chase said, "What? Is this a trick?" Tamsin asked. "Are we all getting expelled? Are you messing with us?" Wood held up his hands in a gesture of play, play, placitation. No one's getting expelled, especially not now that you've all cracked the code. The code in the messages, asked, or the ratings code. Javi said, his tone hushed with realization. It was a test. Tamsin darted from Wood to Javi and back again. "Excuse me?" "Yeah." "Wait, what?" Hannah looked as puzzled as Tamsin, if not more outraged. You made it look easy, Javier," Wood said. "It's not. Trust me. We would know." "Who are we?" Bex asked. She shrugged in front of the group, the shortest of them, but not less fierce than for her stature. "I think you know, Rebecca," Wood gestured for them to come farther in the room. They did not. They did, but not without a great deal of reluctance. Of all of their faces to find behind the door, his was not the one they were expecting to see. "What do you mean it was a test?" Tamsin asked. A strange little laugh escaped Bex. "To see if we could manipulate the rating system." "And not just that," Wood said. "We wanted to see if you could do it for someone else. If you would work together for the benefit of a person you barely knew." "Why?" Chase asked. "Because it was the right thing to do. We had to make sure that you understood this distinction between legal and right, between crime and sin. How one isn't always the other. That's super philosophical. That's super philosophical and all," Noah said. "But why us?" Wait. Tamsin waved her hand, shushing the others. "I was a test." "A test? You almost ruined my life for a test?" Wood had the decency to look at least somewhat apologetic. It needed to be real. There had to be something at stake, something important. "Oh my God!" Tamsin threw back her head back, laughing, a deep, full-body laugh that made the others jump. It was more of a cackle than anything else. "The hanged man. I was the freaking hanged man for your weird social experiment. Why wouldn't you do that for her?" Hannah was less puzzled, but her outrage was building. "Because," Bex said, "it brought us together. It brought us here." Tamsin giggled. She hadn't thought herself capable of such a sound, but she supposed stranger things had happened. Stranger things were happening in that moment. This is wild I'm in. So am I, Chase said. He was almost taken aback by his own readiness, but he couldn't deny the rightness of it. It felt like an anchor, but a certainty, like a certainty, when all he'd ever felt was anything but. He reached for Bex's hand, brushing aside the thick fabric of his own leather jacket to hold it. Bex looked at him. Then she looked at the others. Her resolve was solid. It felt right. It felt good. I'm in too. I have one question. How did you get the messages to us? Asked. Mine was hidden in my diary, and mine was hidden on was and mine was on the back of a photo I took. Noah asked. And mine was in my locker. Chase said Chase. And mine was taped to my locker when I was in your office. Hampson said. With you. Wood's smile was equal parts pleased and enigmatic. This wasn't a one-man operation. There are plenty of people who want to see the system burn. They helped. Let me guess, you're not going to tell us who those people are, Genevieve said. Let's say they're the ones you least expect. People you don't take much notice of. Even people who seem to enjoy this status quo. That's nice and vague, said Tamsin. Sometimes the less you know, the better. At least for now. It helps maintain the security of the operation. If one channel goes down, there are others. I don't like the way that sounds, said with a frown. It is it weird? Jeffy asked. That I kind of do? Yes, Noah said. But he was still smiling. I just have one more question. It was a question that had been plaguing Bex since the first day of school that semester, when the first message had been left in a messy scrawl at the entrance of Malabathrope Academy. Why jesters? Mirth danced in Wood's eyes. Jesters made fool of kings in their kingdoms. They spoke truth to the power, and they got away with it, in part because they were underestimated. After all, who would take them seriously? But also because deep down, even the most powerful among their targets knew that their jabs were just jabs rung true. And there's another reason, one more arcane than that. He looked at Hampson, then expectation written across his face. The fool, she said. Another term for the jester. Also, the first card in the major arcana of most tarot cards. She smiled, accepting the appreciating the curious nature of this state sentiment. What where one cycle ended, another begun. It's the start of something new, a new journey, an adventure. A journey, an adventure. Wood pushed himself away from the table and to stand before them. It's dangerous, what we're proposing. Change won't come easy, and it won't come cheap. But I think you all know what it must come. The way we live now, it's not right. And I don't think I'm mistaken in believing that you all feel the same. One by one, they nodded. Bex and Chase, and Tamsin and Hannah and no and Noah and Javi. They had come this far together, and they would go farther still. The night was young, and so were they. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. A genuine smile spread across Headmaster Wood's face, full of a dash of pride and a heap of mischief. Welcome to the revolution. Acknowledgements. Every book is its own beast. Is its own beast, with its own unique quirks and forbids. Bleh. Rated is no different. It wasn't a book I would have imagined myself writing years ago, but I'm glad I did. But it would never have gotten off the ground without the help of a few lovely and indispensable individuals. Catherine. Yeah, I'm not going to. Okay, done. Yay. Woohoo. Noah Rayner, rating 63. Of course, over the next week, Jevi had become a constant presence in Noah's life, even outside of school. He always, he was always, he was always there, one short text away. Noah had been so distracted that morning that he forgot to pay the bus fee as he got on, prompting the driver to huff and send him a negative, but his rating didn't matter. Not when he felt like he was walking on air. His thoughts drifted to Jevi as he the, set the table for dinner. Noah's mother had made his favorite food, macaroni and cheese, elevated by the addition of the expensive Gruyere. He wondered if was also just sitting down for dinner, what he had been eating, what it would sound like to have so many siblings clustered around the dinner table. What the noise would the noise be louder than the overwhelming silence of the Rayner household? Noah adjusted his napkin at his seat and fiddled with the fork and knife. With the fork and knife, his mother placed a dish of fancy mac and cheese on a trivet on the center of the table. She sank a serving spoon in it with an obscene squelch. His father lowered himself into his chair at the head of the table and then said the worst four English words in the English language. We have to talk. Noah paused, a heaping spoonful of cheesy pasta frozen between the pricks dish and his plate. A small clump toppled off of the mound and landed on the tablecloth. Noah, on, honestly, his mother said, snapping him out of his state of frightened suspicion. He mumbled an apology and tried to wipe away the stain with his napkin. All he succeeded in doing was smearing it around even more. It was her fault, really, for buying a white tablecloth. It begged for stains. Noah plopped the remaining mac and cheese on his plate. It looked vastly less appetizing than it had a mere 45 seconds ago. Nothing good ever came after someone said we have to talk. Not once in the history of their species. Noah looked to his mother and then when his father remained silent. She looked somber, not surprised. Whatever it was his dad had to say. His mom already knew. The news then was meant specifically for Noah. Cold dread coiled in his gut. There weren't there weren't many things that could put the strained look on his mother's face. Is it Cece? Noah asked. Is she okay? Did something happen? Your sister's fine, his dad said. It's just there are going to be some changes in the near future. Noah's eyes darted between his parents. He didn't like how cagey this sounded. He especially didn't like that they were tiptoeing around the announcement. He much preferred the truth dealt in a single blow. An impatient impact hurt less than prolonged torment. Dad, what happened? I lost my job. With a wordless sound of disgust, his mother's Nova's mother threw her napkin down on the table and stood. The news didn't appear to shock as much as infuriate her. so it wasn't news to her. She grabbed a bottle of wine from the rack on, on the sideboard and left. Noah's father didn't watch her leave. His eyes remained on the prolonging macaroni at the center of the table. What? What? Noah asked. He'd heard, but he couldn't quite wrap his head around it. For as long as Noah could remember, his father had been a photographer for the largest newspaper in Jackson Hills. He'd given Noah his first camera, a dinky point, little point and shoot, and taught him everything about lighting and exposure and f-stops. Why? Was it something you did? That earned a startled chuckle from his dad. No, at least I don't think so. Unless I have the power to topple a large corporations, power to topple large corporations all on my own. No, it wasn't me. At least it wasn't just me. The whole staff was let go. The paper was being shuttered. That seemed even more unthinkable. A copy of the Jackson Hills Tribune was delivered to nearly every home in the city. Each morning, their subscription rate, at least according to the last time his dad had boasted about it, was higher than ever. Why? Noah asked. I thought it was doing well. His dad shrugged. It was, but that's just the way of times. Print is dying. Noah wasn't convinced. It sounded like his father was repeating a line. Something had been told to repeat. Noah thought about the school paper closing. They couldn't be connected to the high school paper and the Tribune were such different beasts that they were barely the same species. But the thought was there, trying them together like a tying them together like a flimsy string. But was it so flimsy? Bex, the Lantern's immediating editor-in-chief, had believed that the paper was shuttered because the administration didn't want them talking about the vandalism. Noah had assumed the school simply wanted to silence the rude rumor, rumor mill, but perhaps there was something more to it. Perhaps there was more. There was everything was connected. Noah picked. Noah poked at his rapidly. Noah picked at his rapidly cooling macaroni. It had fused into a small mountain held together by Greer and possibly some by a career they probably wouldn't be able to afford in the future. We have to tighten our belts now, at least until I can find something else. Your mother may go back to work, but he didn't have to finish the sentence for Noah to know what he meant. His mother had quit her job as an injunction instructor at, Jackson Hills Community College when Cece fell ill. She was at the hospital more often than she was home. She still covered the occasional class as a substitute, but she devoted her life to her daughter at the expense of all else, returning to re- returning the workforce returning the workforce after an extended absence was no simple thing. It wouldn't be easy. But that's not what I wanted to talk to you about. It got worse? Worse? Noah asked. His dad sighed. Everything's going to be fine, he said, without an ounce of conviction, but Cece's going to have to move to a different hospital. Noah gripped his fork so hard he thought he might actually bend the metal. Why? He knew why, but he needed to hear. He needed his father's voice to shape the words to give them sound. To air the wild injustice that was about to be done to a sick child who had deserved none of the rotten luck fate dealt to her. Without a steady job, my rating isn't what it was. His dad held up his wrist and tapped on the screen of his smartwatch. The display lit up. Noah's throat constricted like he might throw up. 52. His rating had fallen 30 points since that morning. 30 points lost, through no fault of his own. The hospital, his father went on. His voice sounded distant and muffled, like he was speaking through a heavy curtain miles away. Is the best in the state. It has a minimum rating for its patients. Cece is just a kid, so it's ours that matters. As a stay-at-home mom, Noah's mother's rating was also tied to her father's. One bad day, and their fortunes had shuffled. They'd never been rich, not actually, but they had never suffered for want of a thing. The inheritance his mother's family had left her paid for their house and his tuition. It provided enough of a cushion to make their lives comfortable. Cece's hospital bills had been covered by their father's insurance, but the Tribune. Where's she gonna go? Noah had to force the words out. She'll be moved to Jackson Hills General by the end of the month, unless I can't get this. He tapped on the smartwatch, where the damn number is still glowing. Back up to 75. There is a grace period. Noah stopped listening. The public hospital was open to all, regardless of rating, but nobody wanted to go there. Nobody wanted to work there either. The best pediatric oncologists went to Mongolian Children's Hospital. The ones who'd graduated at the bottom of the classes with the lowest ratings would wound up at Jackson Hills General. I don't want her to go there. Noah hated the way his voice sounded, like a child, like a dumb kid, crying about how unfair the world was. The sight of his father went blurry at the edges. Noah blinked rapidly, clearing away the tears he would not allow fall. There weren't sad tears, they were angry ones, and those burned even worse. I don't either, kid, but it's going to be okay. His father reached for his hand, the one still gripping the fork hard enough to bend stainless steel. Noah slowly loosened his hold on the utensil. It clattered onto porcelain, the tins poking into the mass of cheese and pasta. I'll find another job soon. Noah did not believe him. He didn't think his father believed himself, but maybe that was just why his parents had to say. When the words were too ugly to bear, they peddled flimsily little lies to their children. Noah bit his bottom lip so hard he felt his skin break under his teeth. He sucked his lip into his mouth, tasting the metallic tinge of his own blood. He didn't want to sit there a moment longer, but his father was finally being honest with him. Perhaps now was the time to speak, to ask the question that had been plaguing him since the meeting with Mr. Lau. Why didn't you tell me? Noah asked. His father frowned. Tell you what? About my job? It just happened. It caught me by surprise, too. Noah shook his head. No, not about that. About what? That I was adopted. Silence fell between them, stretching unbearably long. Noah stared at his plate. He didn't want to look at his father. He couldn't. If he did, he'd fall apart. Finally, his father spoke. How did you find out? I had my bone marrow tested. Noah's tongue had gone dry. It felt oddly thick in his mouth. I wanted to find out if I was a match for Cece. I wanted to know if I could save her. Oh, Noah. Only then did Noah look up. His father had buried his face in his hands. The silver of his wedding band stood out starkly against his skin. He scrubbed his face before finding Noah's gaze. It's not your job to save her. His dad extended his hand as if contemplating contemplating taking Noah's again, but he let it fall to the table. That's not on you. I know, Noah said, Noah said. Even if we were related, it's still a long shot. But you are related, his father interrupted, in all the ways that really matter. But why didn't you tell me? Noah's voice broke halfway through the question. Because I didn't know how. I know that sounds like a cop out, but it's true. You were our first kid. You were flying blind on everything. Not just that. Your mother and I talked about telling you. We planned to do it, but when Cece got sick and everything else fell by the wayside. Noah's Noah wished the reason didn't sound so reasonable. But his father wasn't done. Yes, we adopted you. We chose you when you were just a little baby, a newborn. You were a sickly little thing back then. You were, you had been just born. You'd been born a few weeks premature. Your skin was a little bit yellow too. Joudens. The doctors had to keep you under special lights to get you back to normal. But after that, you were fit as a fiddle, unlike Cece. The older you got, the harder it became to tell you, his father continued. I put it off. Your mother had been overwhelmed with Cece's illness. His father rested both hands flat on the table. We screwed up. We should have told you, but we didn't, and for that I'm sorry. Noah swallowed past the lump forming in his throat. The mac and cheese berry bird as he gazed upon it. When he didn't speak, his father asked, "Do you think you can forgive me?" His father questioned sounded so plaintive. No one wanted to say no. His anger and his disappointment had hurt all, and his hurt all wanted him to say no, but he didn't. Yeah, Noah said, I needed some time with this. Is that okay? His father nodded. He reached across the distance between them to clasp Noah's shoulder. Of course, buddy. Take as much time as you need. Noah nodded. The motion was jerky enough to dislodge some of the tears clinging to his eyelashes. He wasn't even sure why he was crying. For himself, for his sister, for his parents, maybe? May I be excused? His dad sighed. It was all such an alien sound coming from his father. It made him sound old and tired in a way. Noah had never encountered that before. Yeah, sure. Noah pushed away from the table, not knowing where he was going, but knowing he couldn't stay there. Javi Lucero, rating 89. Javi was logging into Polaris when his phone buzzed. He glanced down to find a text message alert from Noah. He bit his bottom lip to prevent himself smiling like a lunatic. Not that there was anyone else around to see. Can I come over? Please say yes. Yes, Javi typed back quickly. He added his address to a second later. It would take Noah too long to get there from his house. They were only a few stops away on the bus. Javi could probably squeeze a quick round of PvP if he was brutally efficient. He loaded Polaris with that stupid smile on his face. Noah was coming over. Noah was coming over. Feels good, man, Javi said to himself because he was apparently a new lunatic. When the game loaded, he looked at the team roster. Rogue's name was grayed out, which means she wasn't online. He clicked through her profile to see how many days since she last logged on. 7. That's odd. The team had enough members that there was always someone available to step in if they needed the numbers for PvP or a raid. But Rogue was one of their consistents. The only times she ever disappeared like that were during her exams. And as far as Javi knew, her university wouldn't have those for months. His eyes fell on his phone, sitting back on the desk beside his large bottle of intensely caffeinated soda. In her last message, Rhoda had said that she was going to look into the graffiti on campus, but she never followed up. He told her to be careful, not really believing she would need to be. But maybe, He didn't want to think any farther than that. Speculation was a fool's game, and Javi was no fool. He pulled up the team's chat and switched on his mic. Hey guys, has anyone heard from Rogue lately? No, Domino said. I was wondering that same thing. You know something we don't? He did, but he didn't. Not really. There were any number of reasons for her absence. Maybe she was just busy. She was probably just busy. Probably. Nope, Jeffy said, perhaps a little too quickly. He hoped that he sounded convincing. Who's up for some PvP? It was as good a distraction as any from Rogue and from Noah. Javid didn't have enough time to get in a quick round, but he wasn't his usual self. They won, but not by the large margin they were used to. Even so, his rating ticked up a point, likely from the people watching his team stream their game. Live streamers were always good for that sort of thing. Sorry guys, Chevy said, my head's not in the game lately. No worries, Domino said, all have days off. Before Chevy could say anything else, the doorbell rang. Sorry, gotta run. Bye. He logged out at lightning speed and tossed off his headset off. He needed to get to Noah before his family did. He loved them all, but they were a lot. Javier bounced down the stairs, but when he arrived at the foot of the stairs, he saw he was too late. Eva had already opened the door. She stood on the threshold, staring up at Noah. The boy had his hand in his pocket as he glanced down at Javi's frowning sister. Who are you, Evie, Eva asked in lieu of proper greeting. She looked a little lo- lioness, like a little lioness ready to defend her den. She was a savage child, and while Javi normally enjoyed her savagery, he didn't want it directed at Noah. I'm Noah, a friend of Javi's. There was nothing wrong with what Noah said. It was just that no Javi never had friends over. He was always too busy playing gaming to have anyone over. He knew exactly what conclusion the younger Lucretius would draw from so innocent of a statement. Noah caught Javi's eyes just as the chorus of frenzied oohs erupted from his siblings. Ooh, Javi's got a boyfriend. How come you hadn't said anything, Javi? Are you dating? Eva asked as she ushered Noah inside, and then, assuming that the answer to her inquiry was yes, she asked, how long have you been dating? Javi buried his face in his hands. Oh God, please shut up, all of you. Look at him, his grandmother chimed in, all skin and, and bones. Noah patted his stomach self-consciously. Don't overthink it, Javi said. She says that to everybody. His Mbula shot him a look that softened when it landed on Noah. I cooked. Javi's grandmother always cooked. Her baseline state of existence was cooking. With a small child army at her command, there was always something to eat her offerings. But that did not ha- did nothing to abate her insatiable need for even more mouths to feed, and made mofongo. Huh? Noah leaned closer to Javi to whisper in his ear. What's that? A dish made a dish made out of plantains. It's not my favorite. I also made toast toastones. His grandmother said, "You like those? What are those?" Javi Noah asked. Another plantain dish, Javi said. They're mashed and fried into some salty discs of deliciousness. That actually sounds really good. Noah asked. He smiled at Javi's grandmother. She beamed back at him. And Bula, Abula, if I take a plate of toaststones, will you leave us alone? Javi asked. See, she said, so they both know she was lying. Within 10 minutes, she'd probably be banging at Javi's door, telling them to make sure door open, telling them to make sure they left room for the Holy Ghost. She beckoned them into the kitchen, which he had to admit smelled divine. Javi accepted a large plate piled high, felt feel the warmth in his cheeks against his palms. Kill me now. No thanks, Noah said. I kind of like you alive, and that is, and this is good. I need some. I need a distraction. Xavier wanted to kiss Noah again. He wanted it very, very badly. But there was something about the way Noah held himself, something stiff and painted, that gave him pause. What happened? Xavier asked. It's my sister. No, Noah started. He stopped, letting that awful sentence hang in the air. Is she okay? Javi couldn't imagine what he would say or do if Noah said she wasn't. But it was one of but if it was one of Javi's siblings, there would be nothing anyone could say or do to comfort him. His hands ached to take Noah's. He resisted the urge for less than a second before deciding that maybe Noah needed him to. Noah didn't seem to mind. Cece's fine. It's just he sighed heavily, picking apart his food and letting a small mound of fried plantain crumble on his plate. She has to leave the hospital she's in, Mongolia Children's Hospital. The good one. A few years ago, Eva had fallen out of a tree and Javi told her not to climb and broke her leg. Javi's rating had been just good enough to get her into the front door. The level of care she'd received had been miles better than Javi's own experience at the public hospital. It was just a few months after the accident when the grass hadn't quite grown over his parents' graves. Jeffy had gotten into a fight with some kids in the neighborhood. He'd started it, but they'd finished it. His grandmother had taken him to Jackson Hill's general emergency room, where they had waited 11 hours before the doctors doctor designed denied to tend to Jeffy's broken wrist. No one went to Jackson Hill General. It denied, right? If they had better options. His Abula's rating hadn't been high enough for anything else. That was the night Javi had sworn that he would do anything to make sure his brothers and sisters had more than he did. Yeah, my dad got laid off and his ratings tanked. Noah swallowed thickly. Javi watched the movement of his mu- of his Adam's apple. He wanted to do more than hold Noah's hand, but he did not yet. They wouldn't let her stay if he doesn't get back up. They'll move her to Jackson Hill's General. The not so good one. Javi kept the observation to himself. Javi swore, once in English and then in Spanish for good measure. That's not fair. No, it's not. Noah's voice was thick with bitterness. He looked down at his hands. The nails had been bitten to the quick, and there isn't a thing anyone can do about it. Actually, Javi ventured, there might be. Noah's eyes shot up. He somehow managed to look both great, guarded and hopeful at once. What is it? Javi looked over his shoulder to make sure the door was still shut, but it wouldn't do to have any curious ears to overhear what he was about to propose. Tell me, do you have any moral reservations when it comes to hacking. Oh, and so it begins. Oh no! Chase Dovin, rating 55. Founders Day approached with a flurry of activity. The school took John Malapathrope's birthday seriously. Too seriously, if you ask Chase. Nobody did. The gymnasium was decorated in rich maroon and shimmering gold, transforming it into an utilitarian, uti- utilitarian space to some a from a utilitarian space to something that could almost be resemble that almost resemble a ballroom. Someone had placed a little wreath of flowers on John Lapathrope's bust in the foyer of the main building. The remnants of face on his paint on his face had been washed away as much as possible, but you could still see minuscule flecks of color if you looked hard enough. It took a lot of worship for a false prophet, as Chase had come to think of him. Other year, Chase would have looked forward to the dance. Tickets were sold at the door, but if you were wearing a Lapathrope leather jacket, you could just walk right in without paying. It wasn't fair, but neither was life, so Chase didn't feel partial, particularly, particularly bothered by that small act of inequality. That was a free way of having to have a fun time. To do something besides stressing about his future and his grades and his dad and his house. But not this year. This year he left the same time he would have if he were going to the dance. His father was out, probably at the bar a few blocks away where he liked to watch football games. There was no one to ask Jace questions after as he left. But instead of heading to the school, he took a different route. 20 minutes later, He was waiting outside Bix's house, the part of town that might as well have been another universe for Chase. She'd asked him to text when he got there instead of ringing the bell. My parents wouldn't approve, she'd said. Of me? Chase asked. Of your gender, and, well, of the general fact of your existence, she replied. It's not personal. They think boys are a distraction and I don't have time for. So just text me when you hit my block, and I'll meet you outside. Chase quite liked that notion like the notion that he might be distracting. As promised, he texted her when he turned the corner into her block. By the time he reached her house, she was bounding down the walkway toward him. There was a sparkle in her eyes that wasn't normally there. Her voice was high and breathy with excitement when she asked, "Are you ready?" "As I'll ever be." He offered her his arm. They weren't going to the dance. But that was no excuse not to at least pretend to be a gentleman. Let's go to the Lucky's and find out what this weirdness is about. The Lucky Penny was emptier than Chase had ever seen it. On a normal Friday night, it would be packed with Malapathrope students, but today it was practically devoid of patrons, except for two. "They're sitting at the booth," Bex whispered to Chase, "the one with the lit gold jukebox. They were two boys, both in Chase's year. He recognized them. One of them, Javi Lucero, an athlete of sorts if considered esports and actual sports, which Chase didn't, but still he was pleasant enough dude. Chase had shared a few classes with him over the years. "That's Chase, but who's that pale kid?" Chase asked Bex they sl- as they slowly approached the booth. "Noah Rayner," she said. "He does photography, but I know I was going to recruit him for the lantern, but, well, you know." When they reached the booth, both boys looked up at them. "Can we help you with something?" Javi asked. His gaze wandered from Bex to Chase, then back again, as if he was trying to solve the puzzle of their odd pairing. "So this might sound weird, but we need this booth," Bex said. It did sound weird, but Chase supposed there was no other way to put it. The pale kid Noah frowned. "So do we." The bell above the door jingled. and the forehead swiveled in its direction. Two more Malapathrop students entered. The shorter one was the figure skater Hannah. Chase had always been a little in awe of her. He was good at baseball, but as an elite athlete, she was on another level entirely. She competed internationally in places Chase had only dreamed of visiting. The girl beside her frowned when they saw four of them at the booth. Chase knew her too, but it was only by reputation. Tamsin was the weird witchy girl who charged $40 for fortunes. Chase was pretty sure she just made up. The heavy makeup around her eyes made her frown like especially severe. After saying something to Hannah in a soft voice, she marched over to the table with the gold jukebox and the many bangles around her was jingling as she moved. You guys are going to have to move, she said by way of greeting. Hello, to you too. We need to sit here. Why? Bex asked. Hannah drew beside them. Her lips pressed together in a tight line. She looked worried and a little confused. Why do you need to be here? Tamsin asked. Chase wondered if she was talking everyone this way, or if she was being aggressive for their benefit. This was going to get this was getting them nowhere. Chase reached into his pocket and retrieved the letter he carried with him every day since Bex had discovered it. He held up, displaying the gesture affixed in front. I got engraved in investigation. How about you? A few impossibly long seconds passed before both heads nodded around them. Tamsin took out a tarot card, Hannah a page covered in letters cut out of magazines, like a ransom note in a bad movie. Noah a photograph with words written on the back. Jeffy pulled up a picture on his phone with an image on a computer screen. Each one displayed the same poem that had led Chase and Bex and Chase to the lucky penny the night of the Founders Day dance. I don't think things could possibly get weirder, Hampson said, and yet we are here. We're here. How about we all sit down and try to look normal? Beck suggested. They tried and failed. The assortment of wildly des- desperate personalities crowding into a booth at the back of the Lucky Penny looked like a setup for a bad joke. A jock, a goth, and a handful of nerds walk into a diner. Chase shook the thought away. He didn't want to guess what the punchline would be. Perhaps they were the punchline. A group of teenagers, each from a very different walk of life, comparing notes on a conspiracy theory about a deranged clown. It was all very funny, but none of the seriously studiously serious faces around the table were laughing. The lone waitress working that night came by to take their order, but it was the same blonde who had been there the night he and Bex found their note. Chase hadn't planned on getting anything, but Bex insisted. It would have looked odd. She said it to him in a whisper. If none of them it was it was a diner after all. Bex ordered a strawberry milkshake and asked for an extra straw because it became apparent to her that Chase had no intention and no money to order anything. Javi asked for a cheeseburger deluxe. Noah had a grilled cheese and Tamsin a black and white shake. Hannah asked in a voice so quiet to the waitress to, she had to bend down to hear her for just a Diet Coke. They waited in tense, awkward silence as for the waitress to leave. When she was finally back behind the counter, Jeffy spoke. So, he started, which one of you sent the messages? No one answered. They looked at each other in varying degrees of suspicion. Oh, great, Tamsin said. I was worried tonight was going to be straightforward. Vex spread her hands on the table, leaning forward. If none of us sent the messages, then someone else did. Someone who wants us to come together. Yes, but why? $1 million question, Tamsin said, popping her bubble gum. Another thing I don't get, said Noah. What is these messages have to do with the vandalism of Mlopithrope's statue? He stared a look with Javi, shared a look with Javi. We know they've got to be connected somehow. Chase traded glances with Bex. They were both thinking of the book, safely tucked away in Bex's backpack. I don't know, she said. We've gotten this far by working together, Chase said Chase. We should show them. Show us what? Tamsin asked, her eyes narrowing. The quote on the base of the statue. Bex said, I found the book it's from. Chase shuffled a few inches aside to allow Bex to pull side to the side to allow Bex to pull her backpack up from where it rested at her feet. She took the book out of and placed it on the table. It sat there under the neon lights reflecting off the windows, looking like an object of great significance, out of place among the bunch of glossy dinner menus. A battered copy of Jean Jacques Rousseau's The Social Contract, and it's the original French, calmly absorbed their stares. Ah, yes, Javi said. A book. I'm familiar with such things. Tamsin, the Goth, which, whatever she was, snorted. Chase had never gone to her for a charter reading. He didn't believe in such nonsense, but a few of his buddies had, and their readings had taken on distinctly dire tones that Chase suspected had more to do with Tamsin's general view of the athletes than it did with the mystical the with mystical division div, division. A part of him did wonder if Tamsin had seen this fascinating group in the cards. It seemed too outlandish for even the spirits to predict. It's not just a book, Beck said. She opened the cover with revert slowness, stretching the moment as if she was luxury, lux, lecturing in the reveal. That's the it's the next step. The what? Hannah asked. Bex opened the book to the page she marked with a small post-it flag. Their numbers in the margin, their coordinates. This is so freaking awesome, Javi said, his voice soft and with childlike awe. Where do they lead? John Noah asked. Malapathro Bex replied. She pulled up a map and entered the coordinates. They passed her phone around so everyone can see. Not sure where though. Tamsin touched her fingers to the screen to zoom in. I know where it is. Do tell, Javi said. The music building. The old one the old one no one ever bothered knocking down. Isn't that where you read your fortunes? Chase asked. He remembered Steve got going there once and coming back a little paler than when he entered. Read invent, Tamsin said with a flippant gesture. Same difference. That's cool and all, Noah said, but what's good a location without any context? That's what I said until Chase noticed something else. Bex flipped through the book's yellowed pages until she got to the back cover. With gentle fingers, as if she were handling some priceless artifact, she slipped the library checkout card from its sleeve. Look at the due date. They all leaned over the table, bringing their heads together over the card. A little tingle of satisfaction danced through Chase and Beck's acknowledgement of his part in that discovery. That's next week, Javi said. Yep, Chase said, and I don't know about you guys, but I want to find out what this is all about. One by one, they all nodded, voicing their agreement. There was no hesitation, no doubt. They were in this together, all of them, for better or worse. Some outside force may have driven them to that table, that diner, on that day, but the decision to accept this challenge, now it had been laid out in front of them, was their own. They wanted to know what came next. Chase needed to know. Hadn't realized how much he needed something else, something outside baseball and his dad and his team and his own desperation. Bex fingered the corner of the book's pages, flicking a few up and down. But I don't know. Chase gently nudged her with, with his elbow. Don't know what. You got, you guys all got letters. Messages specifically meant for you. Bex absently chewed at her lower lip. What if I'm not meant to go? What if they just want you guys and not me? You know, Chase said, for someone so smart, kind, you're being kind of dense. Bex frowned at him. He was willing to bet it was the first time someone ever called her that. What do you mean? The graffiti, Chase said, on John Malapatherp's statue. That was your message. You're the one who recognized the book it came from. You stole it from the library. You know where to look. None of us did, right? Nope, definitely not. I have literally never heard of Rousseau until just now. Do you think so? X asked. You know, Chase said, this was meant for you to find, and you are going to lead us to the next step in this super weird scavenger hunt. His shadow fell across the table, and silence fell with it. The table stood next to him, her arms laden with heavy plates and a tray full of milkshakes. She paused at their table long enough for them not to peer at the open book in Bex's hand. What are you kids reading that's got you so excited? Oh, nothing, Bex said, the lie slipping forth with ease. She closed the book in such a way her hand obscured the title. Just something for a group project. The waitress wrinkled her nose. Ugh, I used to hate those. No one else ever did the work. Beck shared a conspirator- conspiratorial look with the others at the table. Chase wondered if she was beginning to think them as her minions. She looked like she was having fun, probably the most fun she'd ever had in her strictly reg- 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 regiment, regimented life. Oh, I think we're we'll all doing we'll all do all right. We'll do all right. The waitress seemed satisfied with that answer and left, carrying the trays to the kitchen. So I take it this means we're all going to show up at that old music building at midnight a week from tonight. I am, Noah said firmly. We've come this far, Hannah said. There's no sense stopping right now. Tamsin stabbed a fry with a little tube of ketchup, and it'll be a little illicit because I doubt I'll even be a Lopatherp student by then. What do you mean? Chase asked. She held up for her forearm and pulled down her sleeve. On her wrist, she wore the same utilitarian display Chase had. Her number glowed a stark, unforgiving white against the background of her screen. 16. No, 17. Chase winced. Yikes. Holy Canada, Chase said. They're going to kick you out. Yep. Tamsin rolled her sleeve down and crossed her arms. The gesture was intended to look defiant, but it made her appear defensive. Summer and her goons have sent me below Malapathrope's bare minimum. That's not fair, Hannah said. She was the only one at the table who didn't seem surprised by Tamsin's abysmal number. Maybe if you told someone, no one will care. Hannah Tamsin tugged her sleeves even farther down, stretching the black fabric over her balled-up hands. I was already living on the edge of the ratings. All it took was one good push to send me over. It was my own fault I made it so easy for them. But that doesn't make it right, Hannah insisted. The system isn't supposed to work like that. Don't you get it? Tamsin, loud enough to draw a disapproving stare from the waitress behind the counter. Her pitched voice lowered as she continued. The system doesn't work. Period. Full stop. We've been served a big old plate of nonsense, and we've been eating it up our entire lives. Hannah's right, said Jeffy. It's not fair. But there might be something we could do about it. Noah put a hand on Jeffy's arm, his mouth pulling a concerned frown. Are you talking about what I'm thinking about? Javi nodded. If I can do it for you, I can do it for Tamsin. Do what? Yeah, Tamsin. Ch- ch- yeah, Tamsin chimed. What? Who's doing what for me? A bell rang, making them all jump a little. It was it was the kitchen signaling an order was up. The waitress walked to their table on her way to open the window that divided the dinner from the kitchen. Javi waited until she was out of earshot and went on. Manipulating the ratings. She said, I figured out how to do it. That made Chase perk up. So much of the stress in his life was rooted in the ratings, and he was on in his ongoing battle with his own. If there was a way to game the system, he needed to know how. Chase asked, why? It was for me, Noah said. Well, for my sister. She's sick. My dad got laid off, and our rating isn't high enough to keep her at the hospital. The only problem, Javi said, is that it would be a lot easier for Noah's sister if I had access to Mongolia's database. Mongolia, Beck said. My mom works there. She's the chief neurosurgeon. If you need access, I can get you in. A languid smile curled at the corners of Javi's mouth. That would work. He turned to Tamsin, who arched an eyebrow at him. And as for you, all we need to do is to get our hands on Summer's smartwatch. And what are you gonna do with it? Chase asked, though he knew he just wanted to hear it aloud. Javi looked at him in turn, perhaps like gagging how serious they were. Chase had no complaints. Summer had always been kind of a number. We're going to depose a queen. Oh no! Noah Rayner, rating 63. They didn't linger around Lucky's longer than necessary. The place was fairly empty, save that for the staff and a few college age, college guys picking up takeout. But Noah still thought that maybe someone was watching them. It could have been the person who'd sent them the messages, or it could have been someone else. Whatever the case, the clandestine nature of it all was getting to him. This 6 of them exchanged numbers and went their separate ways, promising to work out the finer details of their disasterly, dastardly, dastardly plan via text. Noah's bus arrived first before he got on. Javi darted close and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. A furious blush accompanied him onto the bus. As it drove away, he caught sight of Tamsin giving him a thumbs up. What they were proposing was illegal. It had always been illegal. Meddling with Summer's rating was probably slightly less illegal than hacking a hospital database to reflect a higher rating for the Rayners family. But it was still definitely, without question, super illegal. And they were going to do it anyway. The bus rolled to a stuttering stop a few blocks down from Lucky's. Noah rested his forehead against the window. His breath fogged up the glass. He dragged his finger through the condensation, drawing a question mark. They knew what they had to do, but not how they would do it. Going to do it. Unless. He fumbled in his pocket for his phone as an idea occurred to him, his fingers flying over the screen frustratingly slow compared to the thoughts racing in his head. He started a group chat and added in everyone to the contacts. Noah, I just got an idea. I just had an idea. He added a few light bulb emojis, because why not? Chase, hit me. Hannah, hit us. Javi, oh look at all of these delightful weirdos texting me. Noah, I have a plan. Javi, a plan? Not a plan? Noah, a plan. Capital P and everything. Javi, my breath is baited. Chase, a plan to do what? Bex, oh god, why are we in a group chat? Tamsin, yeah, who let this happen? Chase, I like group chats. Tamsin, you would. Chase, what's that supposed to mean? Bex, play nice, everybody. Tamsin, don't know how. Skip that day in kindergarten. Tamsin, wait, I don't think I even went to kindergarten. My mom wanted to homeschool me until she realized she'd have to teach me math. Noah, I always thought homeschooling would be kind of nice. Javi, Noah, the plan. Noah, right, the plan. Noah, so Summer is having that party tonight after the Founders Day dance. Why don't we just steal her device then? Bex, I don't think I know where her house is. Chase, me neither. I've never actually been there. Javi, Hey Noah, remember when I said I asked Miss Sullivan for your address? I lied. I just hacked the school database to find it myself. Noah, dude, that's weird. Hannah, that's actually kind of sweet. Tamsin, yeah, in a stalkery sort of way. Javi, never mind. I shouldn't have said anything. Chase, yeah, you really shouldn't have. Bex, you. Chase, don't. Bex, don't. Noah, guys. Javi. So anyway, anything that you find folks need off the school service, I got you. Bex, don't don't you start too. Javi. You. Chase, my dude. Chase, how are Chase, my dude. So how are we going to do this? Bex, R. Chase, Bex is Bex. Hmm? Okay. Chase, friendship cancelled. Bex, I'm sorry. Chase, lol, not your friend. Lol, no, you're not. Bex, you're not wrong. Chase, so anyway, how are we going to do this? Happy Rebecca. Bex, type however you want, so long as you never call me Rebecca again. Tamsin, I think my crashing this little shindig might be detrimental to the plan. Hannah, oh, I like that. The Bex, I don't think I've ever gone to a party before. I'd stick out like a sore thumb. Hannah, Summer gave me a flyer the other day. Chase, the whole team is invited. I can go with you. Meet you there at 10ish? Tamsin, oh god, oh good. You two best jocks are on the case. Hannah, I'm not a jock. Tamsin, you're a jock in squeens. Chase, I think I'd look good in the screens. Maybe we should make it a thing. Chase, Bex, you should come too. Hannah, wear something with screens. It's our look now. Bex, I don't know. Chase, correcting Bex. Bex, I've taught you well. Okay, just for that I'll go. Noah, oh my. This is like working with children. For realsies, the clock is ticking. Javi, no one says for realsies. Tamsin, I'm bringing it back. I'm making it cool again. Javi, so Hannah, Chase, and Bex will infiltrate the Rollins Manor. Chase, but what if someone tries to stop us while we're infiltrating? I'll fight them. Tamsin, can I bring popcorn? I want to see Hannah throw down. Cena, Hannah throw down. Noah, hey guys, focus! You two go in, get Summer's necklace thingy, get out, bring it to me and Javi. You and me? Noah, I guess I was gonna go over to your place if that's okay. Javi, okay? Tamsin, what? Noah, once this is done, you're all dead to me. Hmm? Hannah Samoka rating 71. Hannah actually did wear screens to Summer's Founder Day after party, silver ones, on a tank top. It was too cold to wear it alone, so she added a simple black jacket on top, pilfered from her mother's closet. She thought she looked like a teenager ready to party. She wasn't surprised that Bex had not worn screens, but traveling for competitions her entire life taught Hannah never to go anywhere unprepared. As they stood a few feet from the front door of the ostensibly onst, all ostensibly ostentatious 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 Austin, 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 ostentiously, yes, ostentatious, ostentious, 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 ostentiously ostentiously named Rollins Manor. Meg stared at the sparkly rose cardigan Hannah held out to her like it was a smallpox riddled blanket. Just put it on, Hannah said. It it'll look nice on you. Bex looked down at her outfit. Dark blue jeans, boot cut, purple and gray sneakers, utilitarian, and a simple white shirt, unadorned. What's wrong with what I'm wearing? Nothing, Hannah said. It doesn't scream, I'm here to party. But I'm not here to party. Chase took the sweater from Hannah and draped it across Beck's shoulders. She frowned at him, but only slightly. True, but we don't want anyone else to know that. Yeah, Hannah said. We need to blend in, so blend. With a mumbling token protest, Beck slid her arms through the sleeves of the cardigan. It didn't look nice. It did look nice on her, nicer than it looked on Hannah. The rose gold complemented her darker skin much better. You know, Hannah said, you should keep that. Yeah, you look nice, said Chase. Not that you didn't look nice before anything, but he looked at Hannah like she was the last lifeboat on his sinking ship. He cleared his throat and filed, flailed for a subject change. Did you bring any sequins for me? Sorry, Hannah said. I don't have anything in your size. The door swung open before Hannah could touch the knob. A tallish guy in a maroon Malapathop jacket stood on the threshold, both hands bearing red plastic cups. Chase, my man, what's up? Hey, Steve, Chase offered the other boy a little wave. He didn't look overly pleased to see him. Hannah couldn't blame him. 10 seconds spent in Steve's company, and she already didn't like him, or the way he looked at her and Bex. And you brought two girls. Nice. Steve held out a red solo cup to Hannah, who took it with absolutely no intention of ingesting whatever vile liquid it held. Bottoms up, babe. He drained the contents of his own cup and backed into the house, beckoning for them to follow. Hannah, daint- Hannah daintily dumped out her cup in one of the very expensive-looking planters bracketing the door and followed. Steve inside. Dmitri would have hid her if he found out she'd taken so much as a sip. But she didn't want to draw attention to herself by turning the drink down. They would have they were then to blend. Hopefully the plan would survive. Summer's house looked exactly the way Hannah thought it would. Everything was white and gold, from the gold flecked marble floor of the foyer to the gilded banisters running along the staircase. Small porcelain figurines sat on the side tables of dubious necessity. Some were some were fairies, suspended with their tiny wings. Fairies suspended with their tiny wings flared, but most were unicorns. They were unicorns in riposte, resting their slender heads on bent legs. Unicorns mid canter, their hooves frozen at the height of their stride, and even unicorns in flight, which Hannah supposed were actually Penguius. Penguius. Penguias. Pagasi. Hey, Bex. Hannah looped her arm around the other girl's elbow, speaking close to her ear to hear over the music. What is the plural of Penguius? There isn't a plural form, Bex replied. There was only one Penguius. Equine, the equine child of Poseidon and Medusa. He was born after Perseus chopped off her head. Oh, Hannah thought she liked the way Penguius sounded better, even if it was grammatically incorrect. So she was going to go with that. Chase split from their group and went off with Steve, while Hannah and Bex surveyed the party. They had their roles to play and they knew them. It still took Hannah a moment to adjust to the atmosphere. Why did we think this was a good idea? Hannah asked Bex. I was just wondering the same thing myself, Bex said. Neither one of them had ever been to a high school party. The last party Hannah remembered attending was the eighth grade birthday of another skater at the rink. There had been a cake and balloons and little bags for party favors. Her coach had confiscated a slice of cake Hannah had been handed by the skater's mother before she could even manage a bite. No, he said. His accents had been thicker than before he lived in the States long enough to dull his sharp Russian edges. Cake makes you fat. She hadn't attempted to eat cake since. What are we supposed to do? Hannah whispered. Beck shrugged. Like you said, blend in, or, try to. Drinks were ladled out on a cut crystal bowl surrounded by matching crystal bowls of chips, full of chips. All of on a table at the side of the main sitting room. The punch was unnaturally red of a brand new crayon. Unnaturally vivid red of a brand new crayon. Hannah served herself a cup and handed one to Bex. Neither one of them drank, but holding the red plastic cup gave her something to do with her hands. Bex, you made it. Hannah had just enough time to step aside before a human-shaped cannonball launched itself at Bex. She plucked the drink out of Bex's hand before it could spill. A dark-haired girl threw her arms around Bex's neck and squeezed her tight. Hannah knew the girl's name only because she'd been called it more than once by the teachers of Malapathrope. Melody's family was Korean and Hannah's was Japanese, but that didn't seem to matter to people who thought they looked alike, despite the fact that Melody was a good 6 inches taller than Hannah. Oh my god. Judging by the flush in Melody's cheeks, she was enjoying the party. I'm so glad you came. She grabbed Bex's hand and started dragging her off. Come on, let's go check out the kitchen. Bex shot Hannah an apologetic look over Melody's shoulder, but she seemed powerless to stop the tide. It occurred to Hannah only then that Melody hadn't even said hi to her. Oh well, Hannah said to no one. She absently took a sip of her drink and immediately regretted it. It managed to taste even worse than it smelled. Truly an impressive feat. From her position near the table, Hannah was in the perfect spot to watch Chase put their plan in motion. He let Steve he led Steve he let Steve lead him over to their group of friends, all athletes and cheerleaders. They congregated around the plush white couch where Summer held court. Chase said something and they all laughed. Hannah wondered what it would be like to blend in as seamlessly as he did. He seemed different from the rest of the jocks, but then, before that day at the Lockies, he thought they were all the same. She observed the scene from a distance. Steve said something, but he was the only one who laughed. Summer shot him a deadly look, then said something to him that looked like an order. With a grumble, Steve got up and made his way to the snack table. Hannah inched away from it, keeping her back to the wall. In Steve's absence, Summer scooted over to Chase and wrapped a manicured hand around his bicep. Could she be more obvious? Hannah muttered to herself to her cup. What? Asked a girl to Hannah's left she hadn't noticed. The girl was piling a handful of potato chips onto a plate, the kind of with ridges, Hannah's favorite. She hadn't had one in years. Her stomach cramped, empty and dissatisfied. Nothing, Hannah said. With a shrug, the girl walked off. Hannah turned back to the group on the couch. Things had progressed in the seconds her attention had been elsewhere. The group had then, with most pairing off into separate conversations. Steve was now chatting to another girl by the snack table, oblivious to what was going on mere feet away. Summer leaned in close to Chase. Hannah winced on his behalf. Summer walked her hands up up his chest, tracing the contours of the M on his jacket before spreading her hand to cover it. Hannah inched even closer to hear what she was saying. Steve didn't know what he had. Summer muttered, You wouldn't be so horrible to me, though, wouldn't you, Chase? Would you, Chase? Her body was slotted against his, connecting them in a unbroken line from hip to shoulder. His hand hovered awkwardly behind her, uh, like, and a little off to the side. He looked like he didn't know where to put them. Yeah, no, definitely not. As Summer laid her head on Chase's shoulder, mumbling something about ungrateful brave boyfriends and all the things she did for hers, Chase wiggled her fingers at Hannah. It was very jazz handy. Jazz hands, e, jazz handsy, and then it hit her. The plan wouldn't work if he didn't have a drink in his hand. Hannah hopped away from the wall, pushing through the crowd of partying teens. Away from the table heaped high with snacks, punch, and red plastic cups. Before tonight, Hannah had believed those cups existed solely in movies about high school parties, and not actually high school, stupid high school parties. With as much sub Sub, sub, subtlety as she could manage. Hannah handed the cup to Chase and kept walking. She stopped when she reached the opposite wall. She leaned back against it and waited. No one paid her any mind. Chase waited no time. He je- gest- gesticulated wildly with his hands while he spoke to Summer. Half the punch sloshed out of the cup and onto Summer's very tight and very white dress. Summer leaped to her feet with an indignant shout. With an with a look over his shoulder, Hannah nodded slightly at Hannah. Now it was her turn. She sprung into action, grabbing a handful of napkins from the snack table and rushing to Summer's side. "Oh my God, your dress!" Hannah offered Summer the napkins. "Come over here, let me help you get cleaned up." She took Summer's hand and led her away from the sitting room and into the hall. Only then she realized she had no idea where to go. Summer patted uselessly at her dress with a wad of napkins. "Thanks," she said forlornly, "but I think this dress is ruined." It absolutely was. The bright red stain spread across the snowy fabric, right over Summer's stomach. "Where's your room?" Hannah ventured. "I can help you pick something else." Summer looked at Hannah, really looked at her, for maybe the first time that night. "Yeah, thanks. That's really sweet." A faint tendril of guilt tickled at Hannah's brain, but it was easy enough to brush it away. Summer was actively trying to ruin the life of someone Hannah now considered a friend. That wasn't something that could be forgiven just because Summer showed an inkling of humanity. Righting a wrong had to take precedence. Summer's bedroom was an absolutely luxurious was absurdly luxurious as the rest of the house. A large four-poster bed dominated the room with gauzy white curtains hanging around the mattress. She even had her own ensuite bathroom, tiled in the same white marble as the foyer. Hannah watched as Summer slipped her off her necklace and dumped it into her van, vain, vanity, vanity, into her vanity. As Summer slid out of her soiled dress, Hannah's finger itched so close. She waited while Summer turned to her closet a walk-in and began rummaging through the racks of dress, all designer. While the girl's back was turned, Hannah slipped the necklace off the off the vanity and into her pocket. She just hoped Hannah Summer was too preoccupied to notice. "What about this one?" She turned around, holding up a canary yellow bandage dress. It actually suited her red hair rather nicely, and I didn't even have to lie when she said it's perfect. Summer beamed. She was a pretty girl when she wasn't sneering. It was a shame her personality was so ugly. Hannah took her phone out of the pocket and pulled up the group chat. Phase 1 complete.